Hello, YouTube. Redhead Takes here. So we've reached the NFL playoffs. Week 1, Wildcard Weekend. And yes, the Packers are not in it. But you win some, you lose some. And yeah, I mean, if you had any doubt that the Seahawks losing and the Lions being a better chance to beat them if they were playing for the playoffs than not, well, you have your answer. I definitely think it would have been better had the Seahawks lost and the Lions had to have the pressure of winning. Even though they haven't had any playoff success for a while or gotten into the playoffs for a while, it would still would weigh on them more since they hadn't been to the playoffs for a while. But last week I went 11-4 because the ESPN fantasy app for making picks sometimes is really easy to click too hard and for it to deselect a pick. So I had regrettably not picked the 49ers to win, even though that was the obvious pick to choose. But still, only 4 losses. It's good. But I was fucking frustrated that I ended with 100 regular season losses because the Packers lost. But let's get into the matchups. We have 5 games, and this allows us to go into the matchups a little more in depth. So let's start off with the first game of the week. Probably the least interesting, I guess. The one that has the less going for it, other than the fact that it's a divisional matchup. We have the Seattle Seahawks versus the San Francisco 49ers. Seahawks playing absolutely dreadfully last week. They were dreadful. They did not deserve to win that game. And the 49ers just owned the Cardinals. Yeah, there was no chance they were going to lose that game with David Blau at quarterback, who had a couple of good quarters in his time as a starter, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough. And yeah, the 49ers just destroyed them. It was not a contest at all. The 49ers just beat them down into submission, and I think that's what's going to happen. Well, not entirely. I'm not going to say it's going to be a beatdown this week, but it should be, I don't know, maybe within 10 points, maybe. But it should be at least a decent matchup early on because Seahawks are playing against 49ers for the third time, so bragging rights to say lost both times but beat them in the playoffs supersedes that. The Seahawks are going to have to run the ball well for sure. If they can't, boy, they're going to struggle because that pass rush is going to attack that somewhat decent offensive line, but to be honest, it's not that great. I mean, it'll get better in the draft in the next couple of years, hopefully, for their sake, but boy, the Seahawks or the 49ers are going to rush them all day long, I'm sure. And they're going to pressure Geno Smith. Geno's going to have to be really, really good if he wants to have any chance of playing. You cannot play like you did last week, otherwise it's going to be a rout. I think the 49ers still win this ultimately. I don't think the Seahawks have much of a chance other than the fact that it would just be nice to see pure chaos in the playoffs. That's always good to see, but yeah, the 49ers are going to do well. As long as Brock Purdy's in there, the 49ers are going to put all their pressure on McCaffrey and the wide receivers and the defense so that it doesn't come down to Brock Purdy. He's been very well in the position he's been put in, basically streamlining the playbook as much as possible for him to be in the best chance for success. He hasn't been put into any big situations where they've had to make a comeback, so he's untested there, so I don't think they're going to be behind in this game too much, and if they are, I think they should be able to come back just because their players are just overall better than the Seahawks, but that would be interesting to see Brock Purdy perform in a game where he has to come back, but I don't think it's going to happen this game, maybe more so next week, but 49ers should have a good game. McCaffrey should be able to run well, because Seahawks rush defense is not good at all. I think they've given up the 3rd most rushing yards all year. So it's amazing they made it to the playoffs with that kind of stat. Kenny Walker should have a decent game, or he needs to have a decent game. The 49ers have their full complement of receivers, so that's good for them. But in the long run, 49ers, I think they win pretty handily. But I think there's a small chance for a spoiler. At least make the betting market, maybe somebody's able to cover, but who knows. In the end, 49ers win, probably 10 points or more. And next we have the Jaguars versus the Chargers. Who would have thought a couple weeks ago that the Jaguars would be hosting a playoffs and the Chargers would be on the road? Well, I guess we always thought that would be the case because they were never going to win that division, especially after they lost the second game to the Chiefs. But Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence is going to have to play better than he has the past couple weeks. The Chargers defense is still not great, but it's improved immensely since earlier since the middle of the season. They've been getting players back. They'll have Rashawn Slater back, I believe, so on the offensive line, so that'll be huge. I mean, Eckler's been able to run wild all year, but now have some actually really good blocking. That'll help a lot. But for the Jaguars, like I said, Trevor Lawrence needs to play better. They need to be able to run the ball, period. They couldn't do that last week, and they almost lost because they ran a bunch and they just get stopped. But, the Jaguars, I think, have a really good chance to win this game. It should be a really good game. The Chargers, on the other hand, are still going to have a great chance to win. Herbert, looking to really make a name for himself in the playoffs. I know he's well known, but he's probably not as well known to the rest of the country as everybody else, but he should be good. I think he's going to have a pretty good game. Jaguars are going to have to be good on defense for sure. We're going to have to be able to rush and play decent coverage. Jaguars defense has been solid the past couple weeks. Still not great. It can be had, though. Like I said, Eckler is going to he's going to get his yards, he's going to get his touchdown or two. Wide receivers for the Chargers are going to need to play well for sure. I think it's going to come down to the defenses, which defense plays better. Also, who can create the turnover. I mean, you saw last week with the Jaguars that scoop and score touchdown for the Jags that won them the game, which was awesome. I mean, that place in Durham is going to be rocking again. I'm just going to say I think the Jaguars win this game. The Chargers just have a history in these games of failing. Chargers going to Charger. And I think the Chargers could lose this game. I think there's a really good chance they lose this game. And the Jaguars might move on. I think I'm going to stick with the Jaguars in this game, but it should be one of the better games of the weekend, and I look forward to it thoroughly. Next we have the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills, which lost a lot of luster yesterday when we found out Tua was not going to be playing. That's just a killer for them, because as we've seen the past couple weeks, Skylar Thompson has been a good soldier out there, but he's just not the starting quarterback for the Dolphins, that's for sure. Even with the receivers that he has to throw to, it just has not been great. And their defense is so up and down. They rely heavily on turnovers, and when turnovers aren't happening, their defense is subpar, I think. And it's just going to be hard to win in that atmosphere. After what you saw last week with the Bills, or the Damar Hamlin incident, that stadium was rocking, and they started off that game with a kickoff return for a touchdown and then had another one later. Boy, it is going to be hard for the Dolphins to recreate any kind of game they had last month when they were playing in the snow. It's just not going to be that kind of competition. I think the game will be close just because of the fact they play they're divisional teams, but I think that the Bills will pull away. Josh Allen should have a good game. Let's please cut down on the terrible interceptions. It's really becoming a problem at times for him. Always seems to have one, and it throws off his stats. I think the Bills should be able to run the ball pretty well. Diggs will get his yards. The other wide receivers will get theirs. If Nyheim Hines has another kickoff return for a touchdown or any kind of good yardage, good luck Miami. That stadium is already going to be rocking because they haven't had... they did have a playoff game at home last year, but let's hope they continue. I'm really rooting for the Bills to win it all. I've always liked the Bills. They're just a fun team to watch. They're very similar to Green Bay in makeup of their city and the people that live there, as well as just the team. With the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, boy, he's going to have to play well if Miami wants to have any chance. They're going to need to run the ball, but who knows if they'll be able to. They've been spotty in the run this year, but Mostert did have a 100-yard game against the Bills the last time they played, so maybe that'll give them a spark. But it's just the Dolphins' offense is completely different without Tua Tagovailoa in there, over Skylar Thompson, who, like I said, is a good soldier out there putting in the work, but he just can't do what he needs to. Also, correction, I meant 6 games. I forgot to write the other one down, but the Bills, I think, are going to win. I don't think it's going to be particularly close by the end. Should be close early on just because of divisional rivalries, but I think the Bills win this pretty easily. And boy, what a matchup it would have been had Tua been able to play. But again, the concussions are real concern for his future in the NFL, and especially with the Dolphins. I don't think they have his best interests at heart, to be honest, because the past 2 concussions are reason to doubt that they do or really care about their players. But yeah, Bills win. Next we have the Giants and the Vikings. I think this could be a real upset special. I think the Giants have a real chance to win. They nearly pushed that game to overtime a couple weeks ago, and then the Vikings made a 61-yard field goal, which is highly unlike Craig Joseph for him to make. But the Giants are going to need to run the ball. Danny Dimes is going to have to cut down on the turnovers, which he has done a very good job at doing this year. It's really changed his team around, him not fumbling so much. It's really helped them a lot. Their defense has been really opportunistic at times. They've been able to rush and sack the quarterback. I think they'll have some good chances this week against the Vikings' shoddy offensive line. For the Giants, Saquon Barkley should be able to run pretty well. I know they don't have a lot of mean names in the name of wide receivers, but in the next couple of years they'll get better. This is like a huge jumping board for the Giants if they want to establish themselves in the NFL and the NFC East. And I think they have a great chance to do it with a win here. The Vikings, looking to stave off another disappointing end of the season, which they've done so many times over their history, especially when it comes to first-year coaches. First-year coaches for the Vikings. I'm not talking about Buck Grant. He is a great coach, and he had a long history of success. Even though they never won, it's like an all-time head coach. But Danny Green, Mike Tice, Brad Childress to a certain degree, have all had their early success with this team. And Zimmer, of course. They had their early success, or playing really well in the regular season, and then getting to the postseason and just crumbling. And I think there's a really good chance that could happen this week. But they are at home, and you know how unfair it is to play in that stadium because the Vikings pump in music like every dome stadium does. Yes, I know the Saints probably do it too. But the Minnesota Vikings are definitely not innocent in that regard. My cousin lives in Minnesota and goes to games a good amount, and he says it's just awful, the noise there, and it just feels so unnatural. It's not fully real crowd noise. There's a lot of pumped in noise. But back to the field, Dalvin Cook needs to run the ball well. Kirk Cousins, he doesn't throw a lot of picks, but he'll really need to avoid throwing picks in this game. I mean, yes, they won last time, but that's a regular season. This is a postseason game. And teams play up to their... Or teams that aren't supposed to win play well up to their... or opposing a competition all the time. And I think the Giants have a real chance to win. Vikings are going to need to be opportunistic and force a turnover or two. That would really help. Jefferson's going to have to get off the schneid. And yeah, the Vikings have a great chance to win. Boy, this is hard. I really want to pick the Giants. I think I'll pick the Vikings. But I think the Giants do have a really good chance. So if I make the next video next week and the Giants won, don't be surprised. But I will go with the Vikings just to, be honest with myself. I don't want to pick every upset, but the Giants have a really good chance to win. I don't want to sugarcoat that. They really do. But Vikings win, and it's going to be a really close game. Next we have the Bengals and the Ravens. Boy, this has lost a lot of luster. I mean, we saw what the Bengals did to the Ravens last week, and even though Lamar Jackson didn't play, we'll see what he does in the playoffs. He hasn't played for a while, so he'll come in rusty, of course. And their defense has been shoddy for like the last month, actually probably longer than that, and their offense has just been putrid. I mean, sure, they have injuries all over the field, but come on. They struggled against the Panthers, and they struggled against other teams too, and it's just like, your offense is not the best in the world, but it should still be able to move the ball without Lamar Jackson, but come on. J.K. Dobbins should be rested and ready to play. Lamar Jackson should be rested, but should come out a little rusty. Quarterbacks always are. And to be honest, the Ravens have a chance to win this game, but not a very great one. I would proffer, but it should be a good game overall for the most part. The Bengals are probably playing with some house money just because they feel like they were screwed, and they kind of were. Not having any chance to have the home field advantage, I don't want to get into that, but the Joe Mixon should be able to have a decent amount of yards. Joe Burrow is going to have a good game. I think he's going to be able to throw all day long. Their defense is sneaky good, the Bengals. They just play good. They cause a lot of turnovers, and they have some good sack artists on that side of the ball. The Ravens have playmakers all over the field, but it's just you've been so unlikely to see them all year long. And as good as Lamar Jackson was early in the season, he's been anything but. Yes, he has been injured, but still. Even before he got injured, he wasn't playing very well. And it's going to be hard to expect him to go into that environment against a team that felt like they were screwed, and against a home field that feels like their team was screwed as well. That place is going to be loud. That team is going to be ready to play, as we saw last week. The Bengals were not resting on their laurels in that game. They were going to win that division. Even though it may hurt them down the line next year when they win the division and have a harder schedule. But the Bengals are a for real team. They can actually still win it this year. I think the Bengals win. I don't think it's particularly close by the end, but it could be. It is AFC North football, but if the game is anything like last week, the Ravens don't stand a chance at all, and it's going to be ugly, really, really ugly. And that's not what you want for a Sunday night game in the playoffs. You want that game to be good, especially with two teams that do play so well against each other. It's going to be a interesting game, but I think the Bengals pull away pretty quickly. Next we have the last game of the week. We have the Buccaneers hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I know I'm going to come off like I just hate the Cowboys, but I think the Cowboys are going to lose this game. Now, mind you, the Buccaneers aren't great. They are not. They're not really good. You could see last week they just played a little bit just to not be rusty, and then they just gave up, and the Falcons won that game outright. But The Buccaneers are not good, but Tom Brady's still Tom Brady. And you know what happens in the playoffs when Tom Brady plays? He gets the calls. How last year he didn't, but they almost staged a miraculous comeback, which would have been BS. It would have shown how rigged the NFL is, but you know Tom Brady's going to get the calls in this game. There's just not a lot to speak of for the Buccaneers. I mean, sure, they have Mike Evans, but who knows if he can recreate that game in this one. I'm sure he can, because the Dallas secondary is they cause interceptions, but they give up so many yards, especially Diggs. Trayvon Diggs still gives up a lot of yards. Yes, he has interceptions, but he gives up a lot of yards. He can be beat pretty easily. But yeah, with the Cowboys, again, they're a good team. They have good running backs. Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott are one of the best combos in the NFL. Dak has a streak of being good at times, but in the playoffs he's just ain't been anything but. And last week's game is really, really troubling that he was playing that late into the game when we all knew the Eagles were going to win and they had no chance to win the division. They were basically locked in at the 5 seed. It's just ugly. I mean, why he was in that game, and then he throws a pick 6, and I think he threw another one, and Dak just didn't look good. The Cowboys offense didn't look good at all last week, and they're playing against a team that's completely defeated and done. Their quarterback had given up and didn't want to play, and boy, I mean, the Cowboys still have players. They still have a decent defense at times. They still have playmakers on offense. But when you get down to it, if Dak is throwing picks, the Cowboys are probably not going to win. And in a game where you're playing against Tom Brady in the playoffs at home, in a game that might be his last game in the Tampa Bay uniform in front of those fans, you can bet he's going to have house money and also NFL money, if you know what I mean. And I don't know. It's the Monday night game. I don't think it's going to be as bad as last year's Monday night game on for the playoffs when it was the Cardinals versus the Rams. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but it's not going to be great overall. It should be close for most of the game, but it's just not going to be interesting to watch. Cowboys always play down to the level of their competition, and they get regularly beat, and who knows if this is the last game for Mike McCarthy on the Dallas sideline. I don't think he gets fired ultimately, but it's Jerry Jones. He's a fickle creature. You don't know what's going to happen. But I'm going to go with the upset special and say Tampa Bay wins, but it should be close for most of the game. But I just have no faith in Dallas winning. I really don't. But if they win, you can say I was wrong. But until then, that's all the matchups we have this week. I'm very much looking forward to the divisional round. I think that round will be much better for sure. Matchups will be better, but as always, NFL playoffs is always interesting. There's always interesting things happening and weird things that shouldn't happen, but as always, I'm looking to make Rumble bigger and locals. I love those platforms. I'm trying to get away from big tech, and I'm really trying to help push with a lot of other people to push Rumble and locals into just being tech and not alt tech. That's what we need in this society, is to have alt tech become regular tech and be just as viable and lucrative as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, of course. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and all that junk. I hate saying that phrase. It's so tacky and unnecessary, but likes really help. Subscriptions always help. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day, and God bless.